Okay, so today's class is about what's called in Hebrew the Dalet Tikunei Shechinah, or the four garments of the Shechinah, of the divine presence. But before we get there, I want to just refer to something that we spoke about last week in the previous class. One of the things that we spoke about was how a person's attitude and his mental state and so on and so forth actually have an effect on his emotions, actions, and so on and so forth. So somebody asked me quite correctly, actually, what about the other way around? Do actions have an effect on the emotions and on the mindset? And in fact, they definitely do. This is something that we spoke about in a previous class. I don't remember the name of the class, but we spoke about it early on in this series of classes. I can have a look for the link. Perhaps I still have the link to that class. I'm not sure. It might be in the Dropbox link. I can look for it. I'll let you know. In any event, yes, there is a work which is called Sefer HaChinuch, which literally means the book of education, or as sometimes translated, the book of dedication, because it's talking about the dedication of our lives to the holy life. So he explains over there, what he does in that book is the author explains the meaning of the commandments in the Torah. He gives a basic background, where they derived from, and what verses, and an explanation, and some legal implications, legal in the sense of Jewish law, and also goes on to describe what the spiritual ramifications of each particular commandment is, or are, what the ramifications are of each particular commandment. So, one of these commandments has to do with what is called the Korban Pesach, the Passover offering. In the times of in temple times, people would bring their Paschal lamb, the Passover lamb, to the temple where it would be slaughtered, and then they would roast it over an open fire. So the barbecued lamb, that was basically one of the things that were required to eat on that particular day. In any event, one of the sort of subcategories of this particular aspect of this particular commandment to eat the Paschal lamb on Passover, one of the sub-requirements is that one is not allowed to break a bone of even after it's cooked and everything like that, one may not break the bones of the Passover offering. And the reason that's given for it is what the Sefer HaChinuch explains. He says that who is it that breaks the bones usually to eat what's inside the bones, the marrow inside the bones? Only poor people. Wealthy people have enough meat. They don't need to go scratching for the marrow. Although there are some people that like that in particular, but in any event, that's what he says. And so you may ask the question, so what? I mean, what if a person wants to eat the marrow, even if he has as much wealth as he needs and so on and so forth, and he's not a poor person, so why shouldn't he eat it? So he explains, because after our actions, the hearts are drawn. The heart is drawn after a person's actions. So in other words, if a person acts in a certain way, eventually he's going to begin to feel that way. And then he's going to start thinking that way. His whole mindset becomes that way. So we see here that there is a clear indication that the psychology of the Torah clearly recognizes that action can produce emotions. In Western terminology, sometimes this is called faking it till you make it. Fake it till you make it. In other words, do the actions even though you don't feel, and eventually you will feel it. And there is a lot of truth to that, but we don't say it's faking it. At least in the Torah, we don't call it faking it. It's called doing what needs to be done, even if the motivation behind it or the emotion behind it is not there. Eventually the emotion will be there. It's something that one has to educate oneself into. So from the actions can come the emotions. And this is actually very important in many areas and spheres of life. When a person is depressed, for example, if you can get the person to start moving, particularly moving in a happy kind of a way, even though he or she's not feeling that way, for example, by dancing, then immediately lightens up the mood. You can actually see the change come over a person when they start to move. And that particularly if they're doing some kind of happy movement. Similarly, there is, it's explained that when a person is in a foul mood for one reason or another, whatever it may happen to be, even if the person just makes as if they're smiling, but imagine yourself smiling. There's two kinds of smiling. There's just smiling with the mouth, and there's smiling with the face. The difference between a true smile and a fake smile is that the fake smile is only with the lips. It's only that. But a true smile, you see the whole, the sides of the eyes start to crinkle up, the crow's feet kind of thing, and the person really smiles. But imagine yourself smiling a true smile, or remember a time when you did smile a true smile. Recall it and try and do that physically and see what happens to your mood afterwards, even if one is in a foul mood. In fact, there are many recent studies of such a phenomenon. And if I remember correctly, there is a TED talk which some people might want to look at by, if I remember correctly, a woman named Amy Cuddy, C-U-D-D-Y, Amy Cuddy, on one of her TED talks, TED.com. She talks about this kind of thing, how physical posture and so on and so forth affects the person's emotional and even mental state. Now, this is a very good segue into what we're going to talk about today, which is the 4 tikkunim of the Shechinah, the 4 rectifications of the Shechinah. And in fact, rectifications is not a great translation. When the Zohar uses the word tikkunim, singing does the same thing. Yes, singing does the same thing. That is correct. Yes. When the Zohar uses the word tikkun, it uses it in 2 ways. Tikkun could mean rectification, but tikkun could also mean a garment. Bigdei isha tikkunta itasa. A woman's clothes are called the tikkunim of the woman. They're her tikkunim. Now, the 2 concepts are definitely related because the whole concept of clothing is related to the rectification of the sin of Adam and Eve and the shame that they felt after that they were naked and so on and so forth. So the 2 concepts are clearly closely related. They are closely related. Now, the section that I want to focus on today is actually a little story which is told in Tanakh. It's told in the book of Kings 2, 4, and the main verse is verse 9. True, Emikadi, yeah, that's what it is, yeah. So the verse is this here. I'll just read the Hebrew verse. In the English, I made it longer so you can read it for yourself. It says like this. Is everyone getting to see the screen here in the English screen? Yeah? Yeah? Oh, okay. So you see here the verse and the translations. So the important verse, the Hebrew verse, is Nasa Na. There should be a gap between them. Nasa Na, let us make Aliyat Kirk Tana, a small room, up in the wall. It's really sort of an attic room, I suppose you could say. V'nasim lo sham mita v'shulchan v'kisei menorah. Let us make for him there. This is talking about the prophet Elisha, and we'll read it in English in a minute, and you'll see what it's about. Let us make for him there a mita and a shulchan, a bed and a table, and a chair and a menorah. Menorah is a candelabra. Let us put these four things over there: a bed and a table and a chair and a candelabra. And then when he comes to us, he can stay there, or turn aside, literally there. In other words, he can be there, have his private room. So here it is. Here's the background. You can read it quickly to yourselves for those who don't read English, or I know there's one person who listens into these classes who is not able to read, he's not able to see, so I'm going to read it out loud, and we'll take it from there. So this is in Kings 2, chapter 4, verse 8 onwards. It starts like this. One day the prophet Elisha passed through Shunam. Shunam is the name of a small town or a city, where there was a woman of great virtue, and she urged him to eat bread. She saw this holy man, Elisha, this prophet, passing through the town, and she invited him for a meal. And so it was that whenever he passed by, he came there to eat bread. Now, eat bread doesn't only mean bread, but it could mean just bread, whatever it is. It's just to go and eat over there. Traditionally, in Jewish practice, we only say blessings. The Torah requires to say a blessing after eating bread. The tradition is that we say it after all food that we eat, and before all food that we eat, we say a blessing, and after all food. But Birkat Hamazon, the blessing over food, over eating, is really only established on bread. So bread is a very important part of Jewish culture. In any event, yeah, this is the oh, right, there is, you're right. Huh, interesting. Okay, my mistake. Yeah, there's a discrepancy between the verses. All right, never mind, whatever it is. I'm glad some people notice these things. As you can see, I don't. In any event, yes, so she said to her husband, I see now that this is a holy man of God who passes by us here continually. Now, this is the critical verse here. Let us make, please, she says to her husband, a little room in the attic, and let us place for him there a bed and a table and a stool, chair, and a candlestick, or candelabra, so that when he comes to us, he can stay there. And so when he came there, he stayed in the room and lay there. Okay. Good. This is the verse that we're going to focus on. Let us make a room in the attic, and let us place from there a bed and a table and a chair and a candelabra, or a candlestick. Says the Zohar on this verse that these four things, bed, table, chair, and candelabra, or candlestick, are called the four tikkunei Shechinah, Dalet tikkunei Shechinah, the four tikkunim of the Shechinah. The four ways in which the Shechinah is clothed within this world. The Shechinah, again, is the word in Hebrew for the divine presence. The divine presence which is revealed, or can be revealed in the world, that's called the Shechinah. In Kabbalistic terms, literal Kabbalistic terms, but not figurative Kabbalistic terms, in literal Kabbalistic terms, the Shechinah is, so to speak, the feminine aspect of the divine presence. It's called the Shechinah. It corresponds to Malchut, the Sphira of Malchut, which is the 10th of the Sphirot, and the one which can become revealed in this world. The other Sphirot are too high to be revealed directly in the world, and Malchut is the only one that can be literally and actually revealed in the world, the effects of Malchut in the world. So anyway, that is called the Shechinah, the divine presence. the divine presence as opposed to the divine transcendence. The divine transcendence, not that there's two parts and there's, two different gods, God forbid, we're not talking about that. It's just two different manifestations of godliness, the transcendent manifestation and the immanent manifestation. The immanent manifestation is called the Shechinah. In any event, the Zohar mentions these four as the bed, the table, a stool, and a candelabra or candlestick as the four tikkunim of the Shechinah, the four ways in which the Shechinah can be revealed. Now, the Zohar goes on to describe these four as actually four parts of prayer. Four parts of prayer. However, the Arizal, that's Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, the Arizal speaks about it differently. The Arizal does not, just 1 second, yeah. The Arizal does not explain it in the same way as the Zohar. The Arizal takes these four things, bed and table and chair and candle or candelabra, as four aspects of life in which one can reveal the divine presence. Now, let's go through them briefly. And I can only discuss them briefly in this particular class. It could be, if there is interest, that I could discuss them more in depth in subsequent classes. But you'll let me know if you want me to go more into depth in any of these four. So the first thing the Arizal says is that Mita, bed, represents the idea of the holiness of intimacy, or as it's called in Hebrew, Kedushat HaZivug. Kedushat HaZivug, the holiness of intimacy. As probably all of you know, the Torah does not see intimacy as something vile or something to be avoided or something to be allowed only because of the weakness of the human being, and people who are on a lofty spiritual level become celibate and do not get involved in intimate sexual relationships. When I say intimacy, I mean sexual relationships. Now, the holiness of the zivug, of the coupling of a man and a woman, says the various holy books, and one of the books that speaks about it at great length is a book called Reshit Chochmah. I'll hold it up if you could see it. Reshit Chochmah, which is a very it's a long book, lots and lots of quotes from the Zohar. It's written by someone named Eliyahu Davidas. There may be an English translation. You should look in your libraries. There's an. Let me just write the name of it first of all. Reshit Chochmah. It would be called in Hebrew Reshit Chochmah, and it's written by Eliyahu Davidas. Eliyahu Davidas, I believe, was Italian. This work was written around the early 1500s, around there. But it's been printed, of course, many, many times. And I believe it was translated into English, but be careful to make sure that you get this one by this author, because there's a number of other books called Reshit Chochmah, one which teaches about, the Hebrew. It's a child's book to teach the Hebrew letters and so on. So be careful that if you do look for it, make sure it's the right one. Reshit Chochmah, or the Beginning of Wisdom. Beginning of Wisdom is the translation of Reshit Chochmah. So in this Reshit Chochmah, which is a sort of a Kabbalistic moral work, or a moral Kabbalistic work, it talks about how a person should live his life, and it has different, what he calls gates. So in the third gate is called the Gate of Holiness. And there he speaks about many of the things that we're going to talk about in the first two of these, which is bed and table, bed and table, mitah and shulchan. Now, this work of the author of this work, Eliyahu Davidas, was actually a very he was a student of Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, the author of the Paradise, and he himself was a very saintly person. The story goes that when he published this work, there was a hue and cry in heaven, in the heavenly court. There was a hue and cry and a big outcry, really, in the heavenly court. How can he write such a book which is not relevant to anybody, and nobody could keep such things, and it's impossible, and having written such a thing that is not relevant to anybody and nobody could maintain that standard of holiness, he deserves to be removed from the world. Things were tough in those days. Anyway, the heavenly court then ruled that they would test him. He would be tested. Unbeknownst to him, of course, he would be tested. And if he was found to be able to follow everything that it says in his books, in this book, then he would not pass away from this world. He would not be taken away from the world. And in fact, he was tested, and everything in the book turned out to be that he was 100% in everything. So you can imagine what a holy person this was. And he continued to live for many years after he wrote this work. In any event, that is the some of the sort of historical background about this particular book. It is worth getting if you can get it, and try and get the Shar Hakadu. If you do manage to find the book in a library, I believe it's out of print. If you do manage to find the book in a library somewhere, then what you're looking at is Shar HaKadosh, the Gate of Holiness, chapter 15, 16, and 17. Those are the most important chapters for our purposes. And over there, what does he do? He discusses the holiness of the sexual relationship between man and woman, and how to make it more holy, what a person's thoughts should be, what he should be thinking about, and so on and so forth. One of the important aspects of the holiness of the intimate relationship between a man and a woman, one of the things that he says over there is essentially a man and a woman, a husband and wife, are really two halves, so to speak, of the same soul. Two halves of the same soul. When the two halves of the same soul, if they're worthy, when they find each other, if they're worthy, then they're able to produce souls, other souls. In other words, they're able to have children, and these children will have an automatic opening into holiness. They will be born into a holiness as their sort of baseline, to which hopefully they will add during their lives. Now, one of the ways in which this comes about is, he explains, and is explained in fact in many places, explained in the Code of Jewish Law as well, and various other places. There is there's a mitzvah, a commandment called family purity. Family purity means that sexual relations only happen at certain times of the month. I don't want to go into this too much now for obvious reasons. Only happen at certain times of the month. That is, at those times when a woman is having her period, relationships are forbidden. After having her period, the woman has to go to the mikveh. She goes to a ritual pool of water where she bathes and immerses herself and so on and so forth, after which she's once again permitted to be with her husband. Now, I don't want to go into the whole history of this and what it's all about and why it is, etc., but there is another book that discusses this that you may find very, very useful, and this book, as far as I'm aware, is easily available. It's called the Waters Can you see over here? The Waters of Eden by Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. Is it trying backwards? It might be. I don't know. The Waters of Eden. Yeah, I think the thing is in reverse. Anyway, it's called The Waters of Eden. The Mystery of the Mikveh by Aryeh Kaplan. Yeah, I'll write it in the chat box here. Waters of Eden, Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan passed away about 20 years ago already. Very prolific writer, very, very interesting person. He was actually a physicist, and a very advanced physicist as well, who decided he was going to pursue the career of bringing particularly Kabbalistic works to light in English. He has very, 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 a lot of interesting works. Anything by Aryeh Kaplan is worth reading, except one. There's one book that wasn't actually done by him. It was done by someone who put together some of his papers and published it as one of his books. And it's very inaccurate, unfortunately. It wasn't properly edited, and it wasn't properly... In any event, most of the books by Aryeh Kaplan, meditation in the Bible, meditation in Kabbalah, those books are very worthwhile reading. But if you want to read more about the whole concept of mikveh, of purification, and the holiness of the sexual relationship, you'll find it in this book. The holiness of the sexual relationship he discusses on page 40 to 46. And it's well worth reading. It's in English. And well worth reading. I think you've got... which is the book you should not read? I forget which one it is. I forget what the name is. All I remember is that it has a pink cover. Yeah, let me see if I can just find it quickly. 1 second. All right, I will tell you shortly. Yes, Inner Space. That's the one, Inner Space. It's called Inner Space, Introduction to Kabbalah, Meditation and Prophecy. That's what it's called, and it is unfortunately, it is not the book to read. It is very misleading. There's some mistakes there, serious mistakes, and it would not be the thing to do to read that particular work. Other works of his are all good, as far as I know. Okay, that's it. Inner Space. So, to discuss further, the first thing that we spoke about was the idea of the bed and the holiness of the bed. And this work, again, the Waters of Eden, is worth getting. If you can find it, you might be able to even find it in libraries. That was a very popular book many years ago. And have a look at that if you can get it. The second thing, that's the first tikkun of the Shechinah, the first place in which we can find holiness, in which we can reveal godliness, is in the relationship between a man and a wife. Since man and wife are part of two halves of the same soul, when they unite together, they're able to bring into the world revealed godliness. And of course, this has to do with making sure that they treat each other properly and with proper respect and with proper love and so on and so forth. And just for the men who are listening in, happy wife, happy life. That's what they say. That's the that's the expression. Happy wife, happy life. So the first one was bed. The second one is called shulchan, the table. The table, says the Arizal, is a general name, a kinui, sort of a nickname for the holiness of eating. The holiness of eating. A person's table is called his repast, his food. the way he eats. And he discusses again in the book Reshit Chochmah, he discusses, I think it's in chapter 15 of that book, Shar HaGedusha, the Gate of Holiness, chapter 15. So he discusses over there the idea of the holiness of eating. The holiness of eating has to do with how one eats. In other words, with what intention one eats. Does one eat with the intention of satisfying the body or the intention of satisfying the soul, or at least a combination of both? It says about a tzaddik, a righteous, holy, saintly person, tzaddik ochel l'sova nafsho. A tzaddik, a righteous person, eats in order to satisfy his soul, because eating has the ability to raise up in every thing around us in the world. There are sparks of holiness. One of the ways of raising up or elevating these sparks of holiness is through eating. But the eating has to be done with the right intention. It can't be just to satisfy one's appetite. It also has to be an act of holiness. We make it an act of holiness by saying blessings before eating, blessings after eating, after we finish eating, particularly on bread. There are many other suggestions that he makes in order to make one's eating a little bit holier. What kinds of foods? Of course, for Jewish people, the most important thing is to make sure that one is eating kosher food. That when one is sitting down and eating a meal, it is done with the right intentions in mind. Part of making a meal holier is to, if it's at all possible, share one's meals with guests, particularly with people who don't have food, or who are lacking, or surviving on much less than they need. So in other words, a charitable cause. If one doesn't know anyone, one can invite to one's table. So before sitting down to a meal, give a couple of cents or whatever, $1 to some kind of charity. You don't have to actually give it to the charity at the time. Just put it in a box, a charity box or whatever it is for that particular charity, and give it when the box is full or whatever, that kind of thing. Or do a monthly donation so that every day of the week is covered. I know a lot of people that do that. They count up the number of days in the year and they give a certain amount. Let's say there's 365 days, or always 365 days in the solar year, but in the lunar year not necessarily, but let's say 365 days. So you give for whatever it is, for the whole year. If we want $1 a day, $365. What could be done in monthly installments or whatever it is. Or if you only want to give 10 cents a day, then it would be $36, or it's $36.50, this kind of thing. So that every day money is given on your behalf, or you're giving money to some charitable cause. That's another way of making a meal holy. Another thing that could be done is sitting down, and when one's sitting down at a meal, is to discuss some lofty Torah thoughts. In other words, some ideas about what one is learning in a spiritual sense, spiritual learning, and how, either it's self-improvement or some intellectual idea or whatever it may happen to be. And that makes the meal itself, again, a holy meal. There are many other aspects of making one's meal holy, but as I said, we can't go through all of them now. Maybe I could dedicate in the future a lesson to each of these, and we would discuss them in greater detail. The third tikkun of the Shechinah, is what he calls kisei. Yes, what the verse refers to as kisei, the chair, the stool. And the Arizal explains that this is meditation, contemplation, and prayer. Particularly the prayer of Shema. Particularly the prayer of Shema, which we say sitting down. It's unlike the Amidah. The Amidah is the standing prayer, which we say standing up. But the Shema prayer is said sitting down, preferably. In any event, the meditation and the meditation contemplation, which one does during the day, is represented by the chair before morning prayers, during morning prayers, in the evening, during evening prayers, and so on and so forth. Really, the Orthodox Jews pray 3 times a day, and pray in a quorum, in a minyan, together 3 times a day. And this is something that everybody should have in their lives, an aspect of prayer, but also an aspect of meditation, sitting down, contemplating, thinking things through, thinking about holy subjects, or studying something in English, if you need in English, or in Hebrew, in the original, whether it's Kabbalistic works or Hasidic works, or a combination of the two, or whatever, but something that leads one to be in a more meditative state. And that should be done for a certain amount. This is another way in which we can find, so to speak, godliness in our actions, in something that we do, in the act of thinking things through, in the act of contemplation, meditation. Finally, we come to the final thing, which is the fourth of the 4 tikkunim, which is called ner, candle or candelabra. Now, or menorah, as it said in the verse, calls it a menorah. Menorah means really a candelabra. Yeah, candelabra. That's the literal translation. Now, the candelabra aspect, or the candle aspect of things, refers to Torah, refers to the Torah. In other words, the study of godliness that leads one to become wiser and holier and better and more grounded, and so on and so forth. That's called Torah, which is called ner. Torah and mitzvot. Ner mitzvah v'Torah or. The mitzvah commandments are like a candle, and the Torah is like a great light. A candle and a great light. So in other words, Torah and mitzvot are what is represented by the candle, illuminating one's life with study of divine concepts. That's what the candle represents. Now, interestingly enough, when we go into this, if we would look into it a little bit more, for those who are enjoying these kinds of things, I will just show you an interesting thing. Here they are. Let me just share screen here. Share screen. Okay. Here you see the 4 Hebrew terms: mitah, shulchan, kisei, and ner. Right? Bed, table, chair, candle. Now he said over there in the verse, it's actually not ner but menorah. But menorah is the word menorah, candelabra. If you know Hebrew, you'll see that the word candelabra contains the same letters as the word candle. Yeah, these 2 letters here. Let me just make them a different color so you'll be able to see. Yeah, those 2 letters are the same letters as these 2 letters, right? These 2 letters. So call it a ner, and I'll tell you why. If you look at the initial letters of these words, let me switch that off 1 second. If you look at the initial letters of these words here, you'll see that they spell the word, what? Mishkan. Right? If everyone got it, I don't know, but here you go. Mishkan. The word Mishkan, which means the tabernacle. Oh, wait a second. Can you see it? Let me see if I can get it onto this page here. No, it doesn't go on this page. All right, whatever. Mishkan. There we go. All right, Mishkan. See, Mishkan. Mishkan means the tabernacle. So these are the things, this is, so to speak, the furniture of the tabernacle, which is the most important part of the tabernacle. The tabernacle as a house, so to speak, or as a tent, was only a tent there to enclose the furniture within, so to speak, which is why Moses, when Moses wanted to, they were building the Mishkan, Moshe, wanted to first make the vessels, the furniture, and then the structure. But Tzalel, who actually built it practically, he was the builder, he said, no, you can't do that. First, you have to make the structure, the outer structure, and then you have a way to put these things in, the furniture, and that'll come out afterwards. In any event, we see that these things over here, all of these four things, make together a Mishkan, a tabernacle, a holy place where godliness can be revealed. Now, let me just go back to the verse that we started with and explain a little bit more. In this verse over here, she said to her husband, unto her husband, oh boy, I copied this from a translation, English translation, so I wouldn't have to, that's why there's a discrepancy here. Anyway, she said to her husband, I see now that this is a holy man of God who passes by here continually. So when we are talking about, I see this as a holy man of God who passes by here continually, says the various Hasidic writings, who explain that the holy man of God who passes by continually is the spirit of holiness which passes over a person continually. There's always opportunities to grab onto that holy aspect of godliness, called here a holy man of God. In other words, that spirit of prophecy, that spirit of holiness that passes over us, which is the revelation of our own soul. How do we do that? We do that, we reveal, we make a dwelling place, a home for that holy man of God. In other words, for the essence of our souls, for the highest level of soul, the prophetic spirit. We make that by making a room in which we place a bed and a table and a stool and a candlestick, in which we do these four holy things which we mentioned before. We make that a space within ourselves, in other words, a makom kavua, as it's called in Hebrew, a set space in our lives. And that set space in our lives has to have these four things: a bed, table, stool, chair, and a candle. And then we have a mishkan. Yeah, we have what is called the tabernacle. Yeah, we built for ourselves a tabernacle. Okay, that's it for today. Are there any questions?